The 144th Open Championship was another unforgettable and dramatic occasion. The old course at St Andrews coped admirably with everything the Scottish weather could throw at it before Zach Johnson's name was added to the claret jug late on day 5. During the championship, Golfing World's Anna Whiteley tracked down the game's biggest stars for interviews and insight, everywhere from the course to the car park. One of her best chats, though, came with a caddy.
I'm now joined by Oliver Horowitz, the author of An American Caddie in St Andrews. And Ollie, what a special relationship and history you have here at St Andrews. Tell us your story. Tell us how this book came around and how you first discovered St Andrews.
So I went to school here from my first year of college or university and played on the golf team here, and then started caddying that summer. And the reason I was here for uni was I'd gotten a deferred admission to Harvard when I was a fourth year in high school. So I had to take a gap year before I could start. So I did it here. I had such a good year that I was like, you know what, I want to caddy here this summer. So I was the only American kid caddying on the old course. So it was all like 70-year-old Scottish guys and me. So I was 18, I was American, I was a student, I was a trainee caddy. So when I started, I was like the scum of the caddy earth. They really hated me.
So did you have any knowledge of golf before you got here? And obviously the old course is such a spectacular place. No wonder why you wanted to caddy. What did the fellow caddies think of you when you got here?
Well, I mean, at the time I was playing off a 1.8 handicap, so I could play a little bit. And I knew the course well. And my mom's English, and my great uncle lived here for 50 years, Uncle Ken.
In fact, he just lived pretty much on the 18th green, didn't he?
On the other side, yeah. It was like an 8-iron to the first tee, pretty much. And so we started coming here when I was probably 12 to like visit Uncle Ken. And so every year from 12, I started learning the place. But really after that first year of uni and then that first summer caddying, I was hooked.
And in fact, I know you're a huge golf fan because I saw in the book that just for a couple of Halloweens, most people dress up as a horrendous clown or something along those lines, but you go to Halloween parties as a golfer. Is that right?
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, I dressed up as a golfer twice for Halloween. It was a low point in my coolness, which hasn't increased a lot since then. But yeah, no, I love golf.
So you came to St Andrews, you were slowly climbing up the caddy ladder. How do you go about becoming a more highly respected caddy? Well,
that's a good point, because it's all about the hierarchy in the caddy shack. So at the very top are the wrinkly old Scottish guys who've been there forever, who've looped for Nicklaus and Palmer and everybody. Then you have your full-time 40-year-old veteran caddies who've looped on tour, they've looped in Opens. We've got 3 guys looping this week in the Open. And then you have the university kids or university-aged kids, finally the trainee caddies. Now, when I started, I had to have this horrifyingly huge trainee caddy badge on your bib, which was like really, really embarrassing. Yeah, and you're getting paid less than everyone else, and you basically have to get your golfer to do a report card for you after you finish every round. It's really not cool being a trainee caddy.
And what's the caddy etiquette when you first join someone on the bag? Is it easy to question a player when they think maybe you actually don't have that much experience? How do you take the lead, and who's boss when you first start out?
You know, it's all about figuring out what kind of golfer you have, because you have some guys who, most of our golfers are American who come here. Probably 90% are American. We have a lot of Japanese golfers too, which I love caddying for because they're so excited to be in St Andrews. And actually, Japanese golfers usually bring gifts for the caddies. So I had a little Japanese lady a couple summers ago. She gave me a packed lunch on the first tee that she'd made for me that morning. And another caddy friend of mine got from his Japanese golfer a full wind chime once on the first tee. Guy just unpacks an entire wind chime and was like, hey, I got you a present. And the guy's like, thank you, I guess. But the whole thing is summing up and figuring out what kind of golfer you have. So if you have a very serious golfer, you're not going to do a lot of stories. You're going to give him the facts, you give him the yardage. And within about 2 or 3 holes, we know what kind of golfer we have, and we know what clubs he's hitting in. The amount of time it takes to zero in on your golfer's yardage, it's fantastic here. It's like 2 or 3 holes.
So with the experience that you have now, what would you say is the biggest responsibility as a caddy when you're out there with the player? Is it to keep them mentally stable? Is it to keep them strong? What is your main responsibility that you found?
You know, I think it's for sure it's clubbing and it's reading putts. I mean, the greens here are so different than greens anywhere else. The 5th and 13th green is just under an acre. It's 37,000 square feet. So there's only 4 single greens on the entire old course, 1, 9, 17, 18. Everything else is a double shared green. And by the way, a little like useless piece of info is that on every double green, both pins add up to 18. So 2 is with 16, 3 is with 15. So you're reading putts for guys who have never seen these greens before, and the guys here really are good at reading those greens. So reading greens, clubbing, again, it's windier here than it ever is in the States pretty much, unless it's like a hurricane. So we're choosing the clubs, but then you're giving the history, you're giving the stories. You're telling about Bobby Jones in 1921, how he went in Bobby Jones' bunker on the 11th hole, made a triple, ripped up his scorecard, walked off the golf course. You're telling all the facts and all the extra stuff. For me, if I see 4 golfers on the old course without a caddy, it's really disappointing. It's a shame, because they're not getting the full experience.
And it almost seems like behind every great golfer is a great caddy. When we see the champions here lifting the claret jug, how much of that win belongs to the caddy and how much of it belongs to the player?
It's a great partnership between golfer and caddy is so essential out here. Arnie, whenever he played here, had this legendary local caddy named Tip Anderson, and Tip would always caddy for Arnie. They won in 60. They won whenever he came over. And so in 64, Arnie couldn't make it over, and he gave Tip to a golfer named Tony Lima, who was a 30-year-old American strapping 6'4" golfer, and he gave Tip to Tony. And Tony Lima won in his first ever time playing at St. Andrews. And when he won, he said, "I credit Tip Anderson more than myself for winning this Open." Pretty cool, right? So it's those kind of things that make St. Andrews and make the Caddy Shack and just make the whole experience such a different kind of special time.
Okay, well, this book sums up your take on the caddy experience at St. Andrews. You've got some fabulous pictures in here. You've got some images of who you caddy for. Just take us through some of the things in this book.
So this guy here is one of the legends. This is Jimmy Bowman. He's caddied on the women's tour. He's caddied in Open Championships. Steve Elkington says he's one of the best caddies he's ever had in his entire playing career. Jimmy Bowman has never swung a golf club in his entire life. He was so old school, he was a milkman before becoming a caddy. But he can tell you if a 50-foot putt, breaks an inch or an inch and a quarter. He's such a cool guy. These are our 2 bosses. This is Robert Thorpe, and this is Ken Henderson, our caddy master and assistant caddy master, who really dole out the jobs and keep us all in line, which is not an easy task. Another legend, Jimmy Kostorfin. This guy has looped for Rita Hayworth. He's looped for so many famous golfers. He's a good guy. Okay, check this out. This is us on our 3rd round of the day. This is the treble. If you do 3 rounds in one day, it's a treble, and you can't move the next day. And this one, if you can see this one, so I caddy for Huey Lewis every year in the Dunhill Championships. And this is the equivalent of the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So it's on Old Course, Carnoustie, and Kings Barnes. And that's really fun caddying for Huey because he's such a cool guy for the crowds. And through him, I've caddied in the same group as Bill Murray, who else? Andy Garcia, Tico Torres. And then a couple years earlier, I caddied with Larry David, which for a Jewish kid from New York City was like the best 4 hours of my entire life.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic insight into what it's like to be a caddy at St. Andrews. Ollie, thanks very much.
So if you're ever lucky enough to play the famous old course at St. Andrews, you could do far worse than asking for Ollie Horowitz to carry your bag, read your putts, and tell you plenty more about the special history of this special place.